Welcome to the video series for OST Season 14. If you're unfamiliar, OST is an online Heroscape league that runs events through Heroscape.org. The next season is a Casualties of War event, where you're forced to drop some part of your army from round to round, losing 100 points and 2 figures each time. For the playoffs, you gain back those points and figures one round at a time. This event uses delta pricing, which is nice to open up the field of options considerably. This format is kinda like a normal Bring 1 Delta event, except that you need your army to be reasonably solid for at least 3 of the 4 point totals, and ideally all 4, in order to have a chance at making the playoffs, which requires winning 3 out of 4 Swiss rounds. This event does allow you to drop partial squads, which is a bit of a twist from most events, and does open up a lot more options as a result of that, as you can run squads that are substantially less divisible by 50 or 100 and still be able to make the various point totals work out reasonably well. Before we take a look at the armies, let's just scroll down and take a look at the map pool. So this map pool is reasonably standard. There's not any huge outliers here, though there are a few maps in it that I don't think I've played on before. The 4 that I don't recognize as much are Coethland, if I'm saying that right, Reefer, Sandy Spring, and Tigris. So looking forward to playing on a few new maps there. In terms of the glyph pool, it's mostly standard, but we do notice an appearance of Sola Gerda, which is a little bit less standard of a glyph. Anyways, just a good thing to sort of check out and keep in the back of your mind when considering armies, just as maps and glyphs can definitely have a big impact there as to what you would bring, especially in a Bring 1 type of event, which this basically is. Cool. Let's go ahead and hop on over to the builder now. Since it's a Delta Bring 1 event with somewhat limited figure counts, my initial thought goes to Microcore and Phantom Knights, as it tends to do in Delta Bring 1 events. The version of that army that I've had the most success with, back when Microcore were cheaper, was 2 squads of Microcore with 4 squads of Phantom Knights. Now this is more expensive than it used to be in Delta. It's now 540, which leaves us with 60 points and 2 figures. One thing that I did notice that's really cool here, with Concan going down recently, is that Concan is now 60 points in Delta, which means that we can add in Concan to supplement the Phantom Knights and sort of hit these totals pretty perfectly for 600, which is pretty cool. Now, bringing Concan to a Bring 1 event is always a little bit of a risk, as he's not very helpful into most ranged armies, though my army is already quite solid there, with micros and PKs both being good pieces into ranged commons. But Concan does help a lot into melee-centric builds, where I'm able to try to make the fight happen around where I put Concan, because I have the microcores to bring them in. However, because this is a Casualties of War event, I'm also basically only risking Concan being a less than ideal matchup in round 1 specifically, because if he's not good into my round 2 opponent, then I can just drop him at that point in time. Now, this army as a whole is definitely fairly strong into ranged commons. As I said, both the micro opening and the PK follow-up is quite strong there. It's a bit weaker into bonding melee. Concan does give some nice tech there for rounds 1 and 2 of the tournament, and I think that bonding melee gets substantially weaker by the time you reach round 3 and 4 of the tournament, where they have a lot less figures and points to work with anyways, so I'm not quite as worried about that. It's also somewhat relevant that 4th Massachusetts line benefit greatly from the partial commons rule as well, and my army as a whole is just awesome into 4th Mass. Probably better in rounds 2 through 4 than round 1, but it's still fine with that many microcore and PKs, because micros outrange the 4th by 1, so I can get heighted shots on them where they can't return wait then fire shots back, and then Phantom Knights obviously have +3 defense against ranged attacks, which allows them to close that distance and fight the 4th hand-to-hand combat after the 4th finally get through the microcore. So it's just a really nice perk that this army happens to be super good into one of the more obvious builds for the meta. Now, to take a look at what I can drop for each round's individual point totals, let's hop on over to the partial cards scoring tool in .org, where I've preloaded this army, and see what it looks like as I drop things down. For round 2, at 500 points, I have 2 main options, depending on whether Concan is useful into that army. Option 1 is to drop 2 Microcore and 1 Phantom Knight, which brings us down to 500. And option 2 is instead to drop Concan and then at least 1 Microcore and then either a second Microcore or more likely 1 Phantom Knight, depending on what's more useful there. And so I can really pick between either of these two options based on whether Concan is useful into my opponent's round 2 army, which is a nice sort of tech to have to be able to diverge based on what I'm facing. It's also worth noting when we start to break this down by partial units that Microcore I just think are one of the best squads for partial squad events in all of Delta Heroscape, because their best efficiency is generally as a pure opener, where you want more than one squad of them because you don't want to lose activations as soon as you lose just a single Microcore, but you don't necessarily need the full 2 squads worth. In fact, when I'm playing this army, I often find myself having 1 to 2 unactivated micros in the back of my start zone after the opening wave is concluded. And so I think that dropping 1 to 2 micros loses way less of the efficiency of that piece compared to dropping 1 to 2 of a lot of other common squads. Now going on to round 3, which is 400 points. I'm almost certainly dropping Concan by this point, so we'll just assume he's gone. And I want at least 4 Microcore, as I think that's sort of their most efficient combo. So we'll drop 1 down to be there. And that leaves me with 4 micros, and then we have to drop 2 PKs to get under the point total. This leaves us with 4 Microcore and then 3 full squads of Phantom Knights, which is still enough to be quite potent and really get nearly maximum offensive potential out of both components. So I actually think that this round 3 might be one of the strongest spots for this army to end up facing off in. For round 4, it gets a little bit trickier, as I'm going to lose some efficiency here no matter what I do. I could drop 4 Phantom Knights and then be down to 280 points. Or I can add in 2 of those Phantom Knights back and drop a single Microcore, which is at 296. I think that this is probably the better version in general, and then just hope that we don't lose a Microcore super fast in the opening, because it gives us 1 more total unit, and 2 additional PKs is a lot of difference. Like the jump from 5 to 7 Phantom Knights is quite considerable. So we'll probably end up going with this variant of it in round 4, but we do have both options available depending on what we're facing so that we can make that final choice at that point in time. For the playoffs, where we get to add points back to our army, I really like the fact that I can add Concan back whenever I face a matchup where I'd want him, but wait to add him until that point, as that flexibility is super nice because I basically never have to carry a deadweight Concan in the playoffs because of that, and I always have access to him when I want him. So I really like this army for that ability. Assuming I can make it into the playoffs, I think that it adds pieces back very, very strongly to be able to match up into pretty much anything that it could face. Right, let's hop on back over to the builder and look at the army a little more. To be honest here, I didn't do a ton of army design beyond this one build, as I found it pretty quickly. And as many of you know, I do happen to like me some Microcore and Phantom Knights. Definitely favorite units of mine. And I'd like to get better with my use of Concan with PKs as well. That's something I haven't played as much that I think would be a useful skill to get better at. So once I found this build, I just sort of decided to go with it and said, this looks good to me. Now, if you're new to online events in general, I'm going to do a brief walkthrough here as to how you can go ahead and hop in and join. It's worth noting that I'm already logged into .org, and so because of that, I see this sign up button right here. So I'm going to go ahead and sign up, and now I'm signed up in the event. If you scroll down, you can see me in the players list. After you sign up, you go ahead and submit your army, which is this button here. So this brings you to a different builder, where we're going to go ahead and just plug in our army. So we have 2 squads of Microcore, we have the Phantom Knights, 4 of those, and then we have Concan. Obviously the 1 Concan. And that's it. That's our 600 points and 19 figures. And then again, if you're using this up here, you can see that you used up all your points and you have 1 figure left over, which is fine. Being 1 figure under isn't an issue. And this builder will enforce the restrictions of that appropriately. Then you'll go ahead and click the save button here when you're ready. It just verifies your army. Click OK there. And then it'll bring you back over to the tournament page where if everything worked like it's supposed to, fingers crossed, you will now see your army listed right here, which it is. And also if you scroll down into the standings, you'll see your army next to your name Don't worry, nobody else can see that yet. You see what they would see for you, which is just the submitted tag that your army's in, which tells the tournament director that you're all good to go. And that's it. You're all signed up and ready, and you just have to wait until the event starts, and you'll get emailed your first round pairing. Awesome. Looking forward to the season. I always enjoy running micros plus Phantom Knights, so that should be fun. The rest of the series to follow will be my games from this season, and then a conclusion episode where I go over the event as a whole, all the final standings, and sort of what the meta ended up shaping up to be, and how well or badly I judged it, and how my army fared into that. So you'll have that to look forward to, and until then, peace, y'all.